the voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's Friday, January 9th. We are in the sunny, free state of Florida for some events down here. Last day of what has been a jam-packed first week of the new year and of the new 2-hour Scott Jennings Show. I want to start by thanking my Salem radio colleagues here in Orlando. They operate AM 950 The Answer and FM 94.9. Great group of guys here, and I'm enjoying the hospitality, so thanks for setting me up today. Also want to thank the Florida Realtors Association for having me down to Orlando this morning. I gave a talk to about 2,000 realtors. I congratulated all the newly minted Mamdani millionaires who were in the room. I told them I thought they were selling mansions to fleeing New Yorkers like crazy down here. I got a lot of applause for that line. Coming up, 22 minutes past the hour today, Brianna Lyman from The Federalist. She's got a piece out today about Democrats radicalizing their supporters. At 33 minutes past the hour, our good friend Tony Kennett from the Daily Signal is coming by. I want to talk to Tony about a number of things, but the streets of New York last night, you had pro-Hamas mobs. You had mobs of people chanting for the death of federal officials. New York turned into Gotham City last night. Only took Mamdani a week. Here we are. By the way, the Scott Jennings Show is brought to you by Ease Total Health. Health insurance is broken. Ease fixes it with no deductibles, no restrictions on doctors or hospitals. It is a set of benefits that you can use on day one. If you're unhappy with your health insurance, and you probably are, visit easeforeveryone.com/Scott to learn more. Ease Total Health, EASE. Let's get to the news of the day. A lot of effort is being made to lie to you. Literally lie to you about what happened with the ICE shooting in Minnesota. The New York Times and its propagandists and the Washington Post and its propagandists have published stories saying the car was driving away from the ICE agent. Now, there is literally video of the car driving into the ICE agent, dragging him a few feet as the driver sped into him. Literal video proof. On top of that, the talking points have gone out. She was a legal observer, they say. It's a made-up term, by the way. She was a mother. She was a poet, and on and on. Anything to distract you from the facts that actually matter. Let's listen to California Senator Adam Schiff, who literally lies so much that he cannot tell the difference between reality and the fantasy world in which he lives. Adam Schiff.
I was struck by a few things. First of all, it's horrifying to watch. And to think about this 37-year-old woman drops her kid off at school, not involved in protest activity or anything.
Not involved in protest activity, you say, Adam Schiff? We'll come back to you in a moment. Listen to this back and forth I had on CNN after the incident occurred.
According to DHS, this lady in this car today, along with other vehicles, had been tracking ICE agents around. Why are people believing that they can drive their car into a federal law enforcement situation and that is an appropriate thing to do? What do you think happens when you radicalize a base of people about this?
It does strike me, Scott, that we actually don't know that she was doing any of the things that you suggested. We don't know anything about what she was doing. I mean, do you know as a fact?
DHS has said out loud today that she had been tracking around ICE agents all day long. That is part of the report.
She's following ICE agents. I think that I've read everything there is to read about this woman so far, and we have very little information about what exactly she was doing. She lives in that neighborhood, it seems, but we don't know that she was a part of a convoy. We don't know that she was trying to do anything particularly with ICE agents. We know her wife was outside of the vehicle recording, but again, we were talking about jumping to conclusions.
You think they may have just accidentally wandered in there?
No, she lives there.
Your position is that
she lives in that neighborhood.
You say the federal government is lying about them following ICE agents around?
All I'm saying is that we don't know.
Just an innocent bystander, I guess. Wrong place, wrong time? No. You are being lied to. Watch this new report.
And as we learn more about Renee Nicole Good, who was shot and killed by this ICE agent, DHS sources telling Fox she was a Minneapolis-based immigration activist, part of the ICE Watch effort across the city. So basically what sources are telling me is this group is organized to monitor, track, interfere, and oppose ongoing federal immigration enforcement operations. They all tell each other where to meet up, they share the locations, etc. And they say, according to this investigation, before the shooting, Renee Nicole Good had followed the agents around to other locations, and then, as we saw in the video, used her car to block the roadway.
Look at the burden your host has to bear. Being right all the time, literally always right, and yet being told he is wrong. Innocent bystander, lives in the neighborhood. Come on. Now, her death is tragic, and it is the result of her obviously having been radicalized by Democratic politicians and her own decision-making. Here are the facts. Good was part of an ICE tracking team. She was actively obstructing federal law enforcement, which is a felony, by the way. She was told to move her car, and she refused. She was told to get out of her car, and she refused. She then put her car in gear, backed up, and accelerated forward, hitting the ICE agent. It's on video. The agent feared she was trying to run him over, and she was shot through the front window. Period. End of story, no matter what the propagandists have to say. I've also heard some insinuations that this ICE agent was somehow not properly trained. I've heard many pundits calling into question the training. First of all, this man was dragged by a car, an ICE protester, just last summer. 35 stitches he got in his leg. He's seen this movie before with these radicals. And second, I have some exclusive reporting here from my sources at the Department of Homeland Security about the nature of the officer's training and experience. More than 10 years of experience as an ICE deportation officer. He was selected for ICE's Special Response Team, which requires 30 hours of tryouts just to be considered, an SRT basic operator course, continuous ongoing training in several specialized skills, including breaching techniques, perimeter control, advanced firearms training, hostage rescue, and more. And he has to maintain an expert marksman qualification on all issued firearms. Sounds pretty trained to me. Yet another narrative that we are having to debunk. What is going on here? These incidents occur, engagements with law enforcement occur, and a collusion between Democrats, media, and activists immediately begins to lie to you. But we never will. We will tell you the truth here at the Scott Jennings Show. Let's get a quick word in from our friends at Child Help. They operate the National Child Abuse Hotline. I tell you the stories of some of the kids who've called the hotline, and you've heard me tell these stories. I donate to Child Help. I wouldn't ask you to do something I don't personally do. A donation of $27 keeps the Child Abuse Hotline going, and that funds one call. You could save a life. $27 saves a life of an abused child. Here's how you do it. Text Child Help to 94878 or call 1-833-302-HELP. The money goes to the kids. We're stopping child abuse. When we come back, Brianna Lyman is our guest. It's common sense for the American people. Stay with us.
The one thing you can count on here on this show, we tell the truth. You can count on it. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
We do tell the truth, and we give common sense to the American people. That's why I have invited my next guest on the show. Author, journalist, Brianna Lyman from The Federalist joins us. Brianna, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really glad you're here. You have an interesting new piece out in The Federalist, essentially about how Democrats and their irresponsible rhetoric are radicalizing left-wing Americans into doing things they shouldn't be doing. Tell us about it.
Yeah, obviously in the wake of what happened in Minneapolis, we've seen both sides kind of, rush to make a judgment, but only one side is making a reckless and dangerous judgment, and that is the Democrats. Because what we've heard over the past few days is that this ICE agent is guilty of murder. Hillary Clinton, Hakeem Jeffries, Ilhan Omar, Jasmine Crockett, Dan Goldman, they have all said that this ICE agent committed murder. Let's reason why that is so dangerous. Let's say the ICE agent isn't charged at all, where there's a good chance he's not going to be charged at all. Or let's say he's charged with murder charges and gets acquitted. Either way, you have a radicalized left-wing base that is sitting back and saying, wait a minute, this man who was employed by the federal government can commit murder and there's no accountability. We have to revolt against the government. This type of rhetoric is laying the groundwork for vigilante violence because no freedom-loving person can rationally sit back if the government is indiscriminately murdering or state-sanctioned executions of its citizens. That is dangerous rhetoric, and the Democrats should be ashamed knowing what they're doing.
Yeah, this has been going on for a long time, and it's an escalation of what we've seen over the last year. Tim Walz and others calling ICE agents Gestapo, saying that they're, quote, disappearing people. That's not true. Kidnapping American citizens. That's not true. Kidnapping children. That's not true. So they started there, and they radicalized these people, like the lady in Minneapolis who was involved in the incident. She then goes and trains to be an ICE warrior, according to reporting today. And she puts herself in a position where she's going to be in harm's way because you cannot interfere with federal law enforcement. She interferes, and now she's dead because of this radicalization. And now in the wake of that, instead of taking responsibility for it, they call the ICE agent a murderer in the hopes, I assume, that more people will commit violence. When I hear what the officials, Brianna, in Minnesota are saying on a regular basis, it's almost like they want their city to burn.
Yeah, and Scott, if you go back to September, this was the second major attack on ICE, right? This was the shooting that left 2 illegal alien detainees dead because of an anti-ICE shooter. There was a columnist on MSNBC, I can't remember his name, but what he said to the effect was, if you don't want these attacks on ICE to continue, you should stop enforcing federal immigration law. And Democrats have sent that very same signal, right? Because you go back to July, the attack in Prairie Land, Texas, nothing was done. In fact, Democrats were like, yeah, all right, we're going to deal with this. You go to September, the shooting, Democrats were like, yeah, well, we shouldn't be enforcing immigration law. You go to the 8,000% increase in car rammings, and Democrats are like, yeah, you shouldn't be enforcing immigration law. Every single time they are giving a permission slip saying, yes, certain political violence is permissible if you're enforcing a law we don't like. That sends a signal to the most crazy people on the ground that resistance by any means necessary is acceptable.
Yeah, the phrase any means necessary, you're seeing that in a lot of their commentary. And you're actually seeing it from people who can do something about it. I saw video earlier today of the sheriff in Philadelphia saying that she was going to arrest or confront ICE agents if they come to Philadelphia. And, of course, they have a prosecutor in Philadelphia who lets every criminal he can out of jail. We've seen Tim Walz say he's going to send the National Guard to fight ICE agents. We've seen essentially Democrats in blue cities and blue states effectively, at least rhetorically, be in a state of secession from the union. I mean, the argument really is we shouldn't be enforcing any of federal laws because we don't like Donald Trump or we love illegal aliens, and therefore we no longer exist under our federal regime. Brianna, 30 seconds. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Walz said something to this effect just during his press conference. He mentioned an incident in 1863. He is sending the signal that the states are in an open rebellion against the federal government, and we've known they are because of their sanctuary city policies. The question is whether President Trump, with the entire weight of the American people behind him, is going to respond accordingly.
That's Brianna Lyman. She is one of the most talented writers over at The Federalist. Sometimes we get to sit together on CNN and debate the issues. I always love seeing you in the chair. Her latest article is called "Any Democrat Accusing ICE of Murder is Begging for More Vigilante Violence." You can read that and other interesting tales from Brianna Lyman over at The Federalist. Brianna, we'll see you back here soon. We are going to take a break. Thank you. When we come back, more news, more commentary, and we're going to talk a little bit about New York City. It's now Gotham City. Common sense. Stay with us.
You want to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it is Friday, January 9th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings with you on Salem. We have breaking news into the Scott Jennings Show. Here to discuss that and other matters, my friend Tony Kennett, host of the flagship podcast for the Daily Signal, the Tony Kennett Cast. Tony, welcome back to the show.
Scott, always good to be with you, my man.
We have breaking news to discuss, sir. I am looking at some video that I want to bring to you and some audio for those of you listening on the radio. This comes from a news site called Alpha News, at Alpha News on the X platform. They have obtained cell phone footage showing the perspective of the federal agent at the center of the ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis. This is cut 14, guys, back in the booth. Let's put this up, and we'll talk about it here, Tony. I'm going to narrate this for radio purposes. What you're seeing is up-close footage, cell phone footage from the perspective of the ICE agent who was involved in the shooting. What you're seeing right now is him at the front of the vehicle. And you hear the talking from the
we don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizens.
Is outside filming the ICE agent.
You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
And there's some taunting, so they're now taunting the ICE agent.
Get out of the car.
You hear the agent say, "Get out of the car," and then you see there at the end the effort to run over the ICE agent, and then the shooting occurred. This is breaking news to you, Tony. What's your reaction to this footage? What will it do to the narrative around the story?
So from what we've heard so far, my team's also looking through all of the background transcript as well, the secondary and kind of tertiary audio that you're picking up from people 5, 10, 20 feet away. The individuals clearly agitators, as we already know from Good's history. Yep. The wife of Nicole Good, or Renee Good, excuse me, getting in the face of ICE officers, shoving the phone in their faces, saying a lot of rather disturbing things. And then we had record before of the wife of Renee Good crying, like crouching to herself. The New York Post reporting, she said it's all her fault. We might know why now specifically, because she is heard on the tape saying, "Drive, baby, drive." So it is she who encouraged her wife, it appears from the footage, to drive at the police and try to escape being told, get out of the car, you're obstructing traffic. That's something obviously she admitted to in the footage as well.
Tony, what do you make of the New York Times and the Washington Post both publishing articles saying that the car was driving away or pulling away from the ICE agent? Even before we got this new footage that we just brought you here on the show, there was already cell phone and other footage showing the car accelerating in and hitting and even dragging the ICE agent a little bit. What do you make of both the Times and the Post going all out to create a narrative that doesn't exist?
Well, I think that you and I both understand that before we put our names behind something, whether that's on broadcast air or whether that's in writing, that you have to be exceptionally careful. And when you are in a breaking situation, of course, you and I were covering the Charlie Kirk situation together live on air. We were very particular with our words, and we were very careful because people who are tuning in count on you to deliver only the barest and clearest details. And so in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or whether in previous instances, might be Vox, for example, who has more retractions than a cheap hospital, and they start getting out there and throwing out claims upon claims, you run into situations where your mouth gets ahead of the facts of the situation, and it's a very great disservice. It puts ICE agents and all law enforcement at risk. We saw the Minnesota State Patrol and Minneapolis police chased out of that crime scene by a crowd of about 800 that afternoon, throwing what looked like snowballs, but as one person inside DHS told me, there were rocks thrown as well. That's attempted murder.
Yeah, look, the between what you're hearing from Democratic officials saying federal agents cannot be present here in my jurisdiction, whether it's in Minnesota or now Philadelphia or Portland or anywhere else, and when you see people taking up residence effectively in the middle of the street, occupying zones, which you're now seeing in Minneapolis, some of these places, both in terms of action and rhetoric, are existing in a state of rebellion. They're existing in a state of insurrection. They're existing in a state of secession. I mean, effectively what they're arguing is that we're no longer part of the federal system. We're not subject to the jurisdiction of the federal government. And, you know, what's also interesting is that we're hearing irresponsible voices in the media egg them on. Actually, guys, let's pull up Rachel Maddow. This is Cut 9. Listen to Rachel Maddow last night.
I know you highlight these peaceful protests on your show regularly. Do you think they do any good? Do you think that anything comes from them?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I do. I mean, in political science terms, there's what's called the 3.5% rule, which is that if you look at authoritarian regimes of various kinds all over the world over the last century, once you have 3.5% of a population protesting nonviolently against a dictator or an authoritarian, that is essentially an unstoppable force that they can't oppose, and that precludes them from consolidating dictatorial power.
3.5%.
3.5%. It's not that much larger a number than what we're already seeing in the streets against Trump.
Unstoppable force, Tony. Your reaction to Rachel Maddow calling for open rebellion in the United States?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's interesting to hear Rachel Maddow now praising the concept of the 3%er movement. That's certainly not something I had on my 2026 bingo card. Of course, we have legal definitions for both secession, for sedition, and of course for insurrection. So between Governor Tim Walz and Rachel Maddow and the many individuals in the media egging this on, of course, Whoopi Goldberg yesterday calling for NATO to come in and remove the president of the United States, they will realize at some point that they are going to reach legal culpability for the things that they're encouraging, despite the fact that it's morally irresponsible, which any common sense individual understands. But the way that they believe they have an unlimited, unfettered reach and no consequences to play for the things that they are saying here, they claim to care about these individuals that are on the ground that they claim to be the victims. And then when those individuals violate the law, and in the case of Ms. Good are shot in an act of self-defense by the ICE agent who was already hit by a previous car 6 months ago, they don't feel any responsibility for that. And those individuals of ICE Watch that they've sent there to be part of, as Rachel Maddow might describe it, that 3%.
That's Tony Kennett from the Daily Signal, my special guest commentator today. Yeah, when I listen to Maddow, I hear the words peaceful protest. They go to great lengths to call these things peaceful. There's nothing peaceful about driving your car into a federal agent. I mean, we've had over 100 incidents of cars being used. In fact, in Portland last night, we had Tren de Aragua members ramming their car into federal agents. That's why they were shot. I heard the words authoritarian regime used to describe a president of the United States that won both the national popular vote and the Electoral College, traditional methods by which we select the leader of our country. And then this number, 3.5%, it appears to me they are trying to recruit enough soldiers to engage in open rebellion. And I have to say, it doesn't sound to me like they have much care for the people like Miss Good who wind up dead because of it. I think the Maddows, the Walzes, the Flanagans, all these people have blood on their hands. They are instructing people to put themselves in harm's way, put your body on the line, as Peggy Flanagan said, and people are going to get hurt. One person is dead. Some people are going to go to jail. They are ruining people's lives, and as you said, they ought to be held legally responsible for it.
It really does turn one's stomach to think that there are individuals that are being sent out to carry out the anger that others want to then take and amplify on television. And then if, the person ends up becoming a martyr for the cause, well, then all the better for it. And that was why you saw the articles come out saying that they whitewashed the individual who was shot here and said, well, she was a loving mother who enjoyed poetry and sunsets and walks on the beach. They essentially like Gaza washed this particular individual, as they are wont to do. The unfortunate thing for them is that Americans aren't buying this. We've seen this before. It's how you can sense when there's a Chat GPT sentence because you know how AI writes sentences. You can tell when the New York Times or another outlet similarly writes a headline whitewashing an individual who participated in a riot. Acting illegally is not protest. That would be a riot. And then facing consequences when, whether via manslaughter or attempted vehicular homicide, drives forward either without paying attention to where she's driving, which is manslaughter, or driving at the officer and ramming him. Either way, the officer is hit. He acted in self-defense. Those are the consequences.
Yeah, there's a lot of political vigilantism going on in America. Some of it is also in the transgender community. We've seen this time and again with transgender activists committing violence. You actually, Tony, reported earlier this week on the news that the person who attacked Vice President Vance's home in Cincinnati is transgender activist. What else have you learned about the assailant against the vice president's personal residence?
So this is an individual who is the son of a very prominent Democrat donor in the area. A major amount of activism in this individual's life. He seems to have gone back and forth between either being claiming himself to be a female, going by like a Julia Jill kind of a name, and then claiming non-binary. No new name came with the new pronouns. But this descent into online madness that we have seen too many times, where an individual gets lured in this type of self-replicating cycle, and then that self-replicating cycle of affirmation saying, oh, you're wonderful, if only you would change your gender, drives them further down into mental instability until, in the case of this assailant, attacked the windows of the Vance residence in Cincinnati with a hammer, and then went around attempting to vandalize the property. Thank God that the Vance family was not home. I have questions as to how this individual made it onto the property. But as of right now, we do understand this individual's history is very left-wing and very LGBTQ plus-esque.
Tony Kennett is from the Daily Signal. When we come back with Tony, we're going to talk about more left-wing radicals in the streets of New York City. First, a quick word from our friends at Ease Total Health. They know and you know that health insurance is broken. Costs are up. Frustration is up. Premiums are up. Deductibles are up. Nothing is good about the private insurance situation. I have good news for you, though. My friends at Ease Total Health have the answer. Ease is not traditional insurance. It is a set of benefits that you and your family can use from day one. No deductibles and no restrictions on what doctors or hospitals you can choose. Call them up, 888-EASE-123, or visit easeforeveryone.com/Scott. I highly recommend you look into this. If you're mad about your current insurance, and chances are you probably are, check out our friends at Ease Total Health. More with Tony Kennett when we come back. It's Common Sense for the American people.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
Common Sense for the American people, coming to you on Friday, January 9th. Scott Jennings broadcasting on location today in Orlando, Florida. I will be back in New York tonight and back at the round table on CNN with Abby and friends. I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss. And Tony Kennett from the Daily Signal is still with me. We got so much going on. Actually, Tony, I want to ask you about what's going on the streets of New York City right now. Let's cue up. So there were all kinds of protesters on the streets of New York last night. Let's look at the first cut one. Here are the Hamas supporters on the streets of New York last night. Let's take a look at these guys. So for radio purposes, lots of Palestinian flags. We support Hamas here, is what they're saying. So that's not great, since that's terrorists. And let's also look at the other protesters that gathered up last night. This is cut 3. These people, Tony, would like to, quote, hang Kristi Noem and kill ICE. Let's take a look at these guys.
American flag you can see in the background. Oh, excellent.
Why not? Why not? Anything but an American flag. So hang no one, kill ICE. So when you see on one street in New York, Hamas people are out. They're emboldened by their new mayor, obviously. And then you've got the usual suspects out protesting ICE. What do you make of it? Has New York descended this quickly under Mamdani into Gotham City and the Bane supervillain? I mean, that's essentially what it looks like.
This is your ally. Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, it took Mamdani a week, and now we're in Gotham territory.
I think under Mamdani, you're getting the left's true idea of what they envision a melting pot to be versus what the right envisions a melting pot to be. So, I mean, as you know, I'm an IU fan, big Hoosier fan. A lot of people right now are cheering on the Hoosiers of all different stripes, unified by a common goal. And on the other side, the left's idea of the melting pot in New York is all of the various flavors of diversity and protest. So you got the Hamas protesters, you got LGBTQ protesters, you've got Hang Kristi Noem anti-ICE protesters. I was told insurrection-y stuff was bad. You know, all of this variety in the stuff that you despise and hate and put on, what is it, tenant witch trials that are coming up under Mamdani. If this is their idea of diversity, different flavors of hatred in the United States against things that, again, a upholding federal law, not changing federal law if you don't like it so much, but just wanting to tear it all down, burn it all down, that is going to eat itself before long. And we're already seeing that, right? The protesters.
So you see in New York, the Hamas people obviously feel like there's no price to pay for this. They're excited about what's going on. Mamdani himself has been cheering on the Democrats who are calling the ICE agent in Minnesota a murderer. He has said that right out of the gate. He was one of the first people to start to fan those flames. While all of this is going on, he is appointing a woman named Sia Weaver to be his tenant rights director in his office. This is the person who wants you to have a different relationship with property rights, particularly if you're a white person. Although it was found out, Tony, that her family owns a $1.6 million house in Tennessee. I don't think she wants them to be divorced of their private property rights, but she'd like to take yours away in New York City. So in week one, we have Hamas, we have calls for violence, and we have the alleviation of property rights in New York City. Mamdani, it turns out, is actually the communist that we thought that he was, is he not?
Oh, I mean, he's the one, he's bragging about it. I've actually met Sia Weaver before, back when I was getting an education master's degree, and it's good to see she just be as insane now as she was then. I'm encouraged to see that the results are coming in a lot sooner than expected with Mamdani. He promised he was going to do this. And Scott, you and I were told, Americans were told, no, he's going to be moderate. Hochul's not going to get behind any of his universal child care fraud that very strangely mirrors the same kinds of Somali migrant fraud we've seen in Washington State or in Minneapolis or in Seattle. Mamdani is making that the platform of New York. I can't think of a better way to enter 2026. My heart goes out to the people that are unable to leave that city right now. And I do hope that they'll be safe, because it doesn't look like this is slowing down.
I gave a big speech to the Florida Real Estate Association this morning in Orlando. Let me tell you, they were wearing nice clothes and driving nice cars. I think they're selling a lot of houses to fleeing New Yorkers right now. Tony, we got 10 seconds. Where do we find you and the Tony Kinnett Cast?
X.com, TheTonus, The Tonus. That's where you'll find me.
There we go. Hour number one is in the bank. Hour number two coming up. It's Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us. It is Friday, January the 9th. Common Sense for the American People. Scott Jennings broadcasting on Salem, coast to coast, terrestrial radio stations all over this country. The Salem News Channel. You can watch us as we do this now. Social media. You can watch us as we do this now. You can get it just about anywhere, and we're grateful for your engagement with the Scott Jennings Show in this hour today. At the bottom of the hour, 33 minutes past, my old friend, old political operative extraordinaire, Matt Whitlock, will be joining me for some Friday punditry. But here at the top of this hour, I am very pleased to welcome a new member of the Scott Jennings Carousel of Guests. Chief Pentagon Correspondent for One America News, Alexandra Ingersoll. Alex, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
So great to be here, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
We recently met and been following your reporting over at the Pentagon, and I thought I'd have you on today because the first week of 2026 has been one of the most consequential foreign policy weeks in modern American political history. We have a lot going on, and you are covering Secretary Pete Hegseth as closely as anyone out there. Actually, let's do we have Hegseth, by the way, guys? We do have it. Let's take a look at Pete. He was out in L.A. swearing in some troops this week. Here's Secretary Hegseth.
Your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name. I do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
And that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will obey the orders of the President of the United States.
That I will obey the orders of the President of the United States.
And the orders of the officers appointed over me.
And the orders of the officers appointed over me.
According to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
According to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Always exciting, Alex, to hear new recruits being sworn in. And it's actually, I think, a hallmark of Secretary Hegseth's tenure so far that recruitment is now way up. This looks like a man who is enjoying his job, and he had to fight hard to get it after all the Democratic opposition. You've been covering him for the last year. What's your impression of Secretary Hegseth's tenure so far?
Yeah, Secretary Hegseth's tenure, it's been a really strong revival for the Pentagon. He's certainly refreshed, so many of these programs, cut out a lot of the fluff, like the DEI policies that were really just hampering the culture. There seems to be sort of this renewed vigor about the Pentagon and within the Department of Defense. Everyone's just really excited about the record-breaking recruiting happening across all armed service divisions 3 and 4 months ahead of schedule. It's just absolutely fantastic milestones. I have a special on Space Force that's coming out, I think, next weekend, and I was able to chat with some high-ranking officials there. It's just a really fascinating time to be part of covering the Department of War. And now with the president saying that he wants to up its budget by 50% to $1.5 trillion, just so many things to come.
You just raised in that last point something that is worthy of conversation. There were a lot of people last year who thought that Donald Trump, the president, the commander-in-chief, might be encouraged to cut Pentagon spending, that he might be encouraged to cut the military. In fact, some people were asking him to do that. In fact, he's proposing a massive increase. Now, I assume some of this is because we're now involved in a lot of military activities out there. In your reporting, what do you hear about that in the building, out of the building? I mean, the president's coalition does contain some people on the right, some libertarian-type folks who just think we shouldn't have to spend this much on national defense. I personally think it's terrific, and we need to rebuild the arsenal of democracy. What's your reporting radar tell you about this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are pointing to the pledges that we've received from our European NATO allies, that our President Trump was able to get a historic 5% pledge of their GDP towards their own military spending. And I think this $1.5 trillion, that gets us toward that 5% benchmark as well. I think it's a really notable benchmark for this leadership to have. And it's certainly going to be very important, as you just mentioned, with the uptick in activities lately, Venezuela and Russia, China, obviously. There's always a concern going on over the Indo-Pacific. That's something that's been a little bit glossed over, but technically it's our largest military theater. So I would expect there to be, a need for this uptick in spending, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think we're going to find a lot of support for that in the Congress. So back to Pete Hegseth for a moment. He has been a busy Secretary of War. Administratively, the recruitment numbers are great. And on the operations side, to me, when you look at what we did with Iran, taking out the nuclear weapons, and you look at what we did in Venezuela in about 90 minutes, taking out and arresting Maduro, it strikes me the biggest bright line difference between this Pentagon and the Biden Pentagon is competence. And that is interesting because all the political attacks on Hegseth when he was being confirmed was that he's not qualified, he'll be incompetent, he doesn't know how to run this. But we've seen two very important major military operations on his watch go as smoothly as they could have possibly gone. In your opinion, has he proved all the doubters wrong?
I think so. I think he's surrounded himself with the top brass as you can get. I think that he has Steve Feinberg really streamlining and driving all these financial acquisition reforms that are going on, and I think he's got, General Kane is just out of this world competent, and we've just been so. It's been so interesting to see him at the press conferences following our huge operations in the past little while, just being able to lay out the high level military tactical operations that we've carried out. I think Hegseth is just so, the reaction to him on the ground. I was able to travel with the Secretary to Fort Benning back in September, and the reaction that he gets from the troops is just awesome. He's on one hand, warfighter. He's one of them, but on the other hand, they just have such tremendous respect and they look up to him so much. It really appears.
Yeah, he's a warfighter, and I interviewed him when I wrote my book last year, and he told me, I'm going to take the wet blanket off the American military, and I think he has done that, and I think they appreciate him for it. Let me talk about the topic of Iran. We're seeing unfolding unrest on the streets of Iran. The people are rising up against the butchers, the Ayatollah. They're burning his picture in his hometown. They're taking over buildings. They're busting through gates. The president has rattled our saber here and said if the Iranian regime fires on the protesters, we'll engage. What are you hearing in the Pentagon about what we might do regarding Iran and the uprising going on there now?
Well, certainly there have been some movements of assets over in the Central Command in, the last few weeks. There's been no boots on the ground in Iran. However, the Pentagon says that they're always prepared for military actions. It's been so interesting to see these protests going on in the last 2 weeks. This seems like a really unprecedented uprising against the Ayatollah and the mullahs there in Iran, something that it looks like even the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, has said that he's never seen this level of, this movement, this rebellion against this regime. And this really could well be the end of what's been such a terrible
terrorists, murderers,
to Iran
butchers.
In the past decades. Yeah, exactly.
They've destabilized the Middle East. They're enemies of the United States, and we need to be behind the Iranian people. That voice you're hearing today, Alexandra Ingersoll. She's the chief Pentagon correspondent for One America News, the pride of San Diego. She's going to stick with us here for a little bit longer. I want to get your take on the breaking body cam footage that we just got out of Minnesota. Quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. I'm just going to shoot you straight. I didn't know a lot about Relief Factor until last summer. I learned about it, talked to the people who run the company, talked to the people who invented it. I started using it. I noticed a difference. But then my dad, who spends a lot of time with us and our family and helps me with the 4 boys back in the Jennings household, he comes along. And by the way, these kids will put you through the paces. They're little. They're active. And my dad comes along and he says, I'm going to try it. And I'm telling you right now, as sure as I sit here in Orlando, it made a difference in my father's ability to move around and keep up with these little ones. He's never doubted it, and you shouldn't either. Get on the 3-week quick start, $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. If you're having some aches and pains, this might be the answer. More with Alex Ingersoll when we come back. Scott Jennings on Salem.
Truth, justice, and the American way. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Veteran journalist Alexandra Ingersoll is my guest. She's the chief Pentagon correspondent at the One America News Network. very experienced journalist. And Alex, I want to get your reaction to the breaking news of the hour. At Alpha News on the X platform, Alpha News has obtained point-of-view footage. I'm not sure if it's body cam footage or if it's a cell phone, but either way, it's point-of-view footage of the ICE agent involved in the shooting in Minneapolis. Let's get it up on the screen and on the audio here, guys. And I'm going to narrate through this a little bit, Alex. I know you can see it, but you see the agent approaching the red minivan that we've all seen on the footage now. And you're going to see and hear the interactions between him and the driver, Miss Good, and her wife, who was outside filming.
Fine, dude. I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. That's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking
You want to come at us? Spouse of
you want
the
to come at
driver.
us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
Yeah. You see the spouse of the driver taunting the ICE agent.
Get out of the car.
Get out of the car. The clear instruction to get out of the car was given, and then you see the car accelerate into the ICE agent. Alex, as you look at this as a journalist, how does this change the tone or narrative of the story for you?
When I watched the first video that came out, I believed that was enough of a vindication for the ICE agent. But I think this body cam footage just puts this whole narrative to bed that this ICE agent appeared to be very justified in using force, which he is legally allowed to use against this obstruction, this person who is obstructing the way of the ICE agents, taunting. They were clearly not just, happened to be in the neighborhood, and they were clearly agitators. And it's just really sad to have seen this narrative take off in mainstream media, that there was all this presumed innocence of these women. I think this body cam footage clearly provides a more context to what was taking place.
It's a sad situation. You have a woman here who has died, and no one should be celebrating the death of anybody. I certainly don't. It's sad. No. It's terrible. It's tragic. You don't want to see people being injured or dying in these situations. But at the same time, you can't ignore the facts. This person put themselves in harm's way. They disobeyed law enforcement orders. They were interfering with an ongoing law enforcement situation, and obviously felt as though it was either their right or responsibility to do so. And now you see the tragic results. As a journalist, I'm interested in your further comments on this. I see the New York Times, I see the Washington Post. Even on CNN the other night, I was assured that she's just a local resident who was accidentally passing through this situation. Anybody with half a brain knew that wasn't the case when we saw the initial thing, and now it's obvious. Do you believe there will be any recanting, any corrections, or any humility in any of these other journalists and outfits that tried to sell this narrative to the American people?
I'm not holding my breath. I think that first video has been widely spread, and the narrative's already been set. So we can only hope that this further context provides enough power to move the needle on public opinion. But certainly, it was really discouraging to see all these press outlets essentially take such a hard line, focus into defending these women agitators who were obstructing these ICE agents from what it appears to be. And also, the piling on of Governor Tim Walz, the now very disgraced Governor Tim Walz, facing lots of allegation of fraudulent conduct with the Somali population. And then Mayor Jacob Fry just saying, these ICE agents shouldn't be here. I just think it's really discouraging to see this pile on by local authorities for these law enforcement officers just doing what they are ordered to do.
Well, it's unfortunate, but it's worse than that in some ways, because obviously their supporters are being radicalized and they're choosing to put themselves in harm's way. Now someone is dead. People are going to get injured or die if they keep taking instructions from these Democrats to act in open rebellion or insurrection or secession from the United States. The rhetoric out there
it's like
is well out of bounds. Alex, thank you for coming by today. I've got like 100 more questions for you, so you're going to have to come back and go ahead and agree to it now. And we're going to follow your reporting at the Pentagon. Alex Ingersoll from OAN, thanks for coming by. When we come back after the break, Matt Whitlock is here. Friday Punditry. Stay with us.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
Oh boy, we have been drinking from a fire hose of news today and every day this week. Seems like something has happened, and more is happening than we could even get to in our brand new Scott Jennings 2-hour show. And we appreciate all of our new affiliates around the country, and we appreciate all of our listeners who are following along, busting the narratives, bringing you the truth here on Common Sense for the American people. I invited along for Friday Punditry my good buddy, legendary political operative, Matt Whitlock is here. Matt, welcome into the show.
Great to be with you. Thank you for having me. Huge fan of the show and obviously yours.
Matt and I, we it's funny. I follow your social media. By the way, first things first, you need to follow Matt Whitlock. Where do we see you on the X platform, Matt?
Just at Matt Whitlock. I have recently used the X tool to change to a simpler handle. At Matt Whitlock is me.
At Matt Whitlock. Very good. Okay, let's start here. I'm going to play you. This is going to be cut 12, gentlemen, back in the booth. I'm going to play you a cut of a bunch of voices that you're going to recognize. Let's hear from luminaries from the left.
No one is above the law.
Nobody's above the law.
No person is above the law. No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
You're not above the law. You're not an elite. You're not untouchable. And so it's nice to see that the rule of law has returned.
Okay, first of all, that supercut was put together by friend of the show, at Maze Moore. Maze has a lot of great cuts out there. But, Matt, when you hear all these Democrats and media people saying no one is above the law, and then you simultaneously see them egging on their supporters to break the law by interfering with ICE operations around the country, what does that say to you? What is your reaction to that?
It's so jarring because there was a time not that long ago where there were responsible Democrats who, in the wake of a tragedy, a police-involved shooting, anything like that, would say, let's get all the facts. That's out the window. And it started with that Jacob Fry, the most unimpressive Democrat leader in the country, who minutes after this shooting said, I've seen the tape. Which one? Which one? We've seen 47 different angles now, and most of them make pretty clear what happened here. But he went straight to ICE, get the F out of here, which I think is so outrageous now because none of them waited to even see a second angle. They know ICE is the out group. ICE is the enemy they can rally their base around, and that's what they jump to. And so no one's above the law unless you're a Democrat needing to score political points. I think we're going to continue to find out more about the groups that organize these disrupt ICE activities. The most recent body cam that I know you've shown and talked about highlights the fact that this woman was a part of an organized effort to disrupt ICE. That does not mean that she deserved to die, but it does mean she wasn't some bystander, as most of the media reports initially would have had you believe. She was in there to disrupt. While she was disrupting, she panicked, drove into a police officer, and yet, even with all of the clear as day video evidence we have of this, every single previously nobody is above the law Democrat is saying, actually, the law is bad. Throw out ICE. No more immigration enforcement. Let's have chaos everywhere. It is so outrageous to watch.
So it's one thing, I think, for private citizens or people, I guess, random people. I assume some of them are citizens and some of them aren't, truthfully. You see them out on the street breaking laws, being radicalized. It's quite another thing. Jarring is the word you used. I tend to agree with that. To see elected officials engaging in effectively the same behavior. And I want to take us to Philadelphia. The Philadelphia sheriff is named Rochelle Bilal, and I'm gonna play you a clip of her. I saw this morning, and I couldn't believe it. Now, this is a sheriff. This person wears a badge. This is a law enforcement person in Philadelphia, not a small town. Let's hear what she has to say.
So I'm with the DA, and we will work with them. If any of them want to come in this city and commit a crime, You will not be able to hide. Nobody will whisk you off. You don't want this smoke, because we will bring it to you. And the fake, whatever they call them, because I can't say the name, but the criminal in the White House would not be able to keep you from going to jail.
Okay, so this is the sheriff in Philadelphia. Again, her name is Rochelle Bilal, and effectively, she is promising to use local law enforcement to confront and fight and arrest federal agents. It strikes me, Matt, that she and Jacob Fry and Tim Walz and Peggy Flanagan and Tina Smith and the characters out in Portland and on and on and on are currently existing in a state of, at a minimum, rhetorical secession from the United States. Yep. Is that how it hits your ear?
Oh, it does. It's so funny because we hear all the time Donald Trump's going to start a civil war. Greg Abbott, when he enforced the border, despite Biden opening the border, was going to start a civil war. These Democrats are talking about it openly. You have the Philly sheriff there. Tim Walz said really similar things yesterday. He talked about using their law enforcement to fight back against ICE and to protect against federal enforcement. What's crazy to me is the fact that ICE helps law enforcement because it removes illegal immigrant criminals from their system, either making room within their jails, within their prisons for people they need to fill them with, but also taking things off the plate of local law enforcement. And so even right after the incident, you had the Minneapolis chief of police questioning ICE's practices and trying to sort of say, hey, we wouldn't have done it this way here, as if the Minneapolis Police Department over the last few years was the beacon or exemplar of good behavior. We're seeing this in these left-wing cities with law enforcement rising against law enforcement in places where you want law enforcement to be effective. You want them to work well with federal authorities who are also there to make the city less safe. And I think one thing that just really bothers me about all of this is you still have a 60-ish% majority who wants to see illegal immigrants removed from this country after Joe Biden let millions and millions of them in. And now you've got these Democrats trying to go even harder into a sanctuary policy where we're saying we're not going to have ICE. If there was any city, any jurisdiction in the country that made a good case for the need for ICE and immigration enforcement, it is the state of Minnesota after everything we've seen over these last few weeks.
Yeah, the position of the Democratic Party on illegal immigration right now is absolutely bonkers. The position of the Biden administration, as you pointed out, was to let in 20 million people, maybe. We don't know. That's the thing. We throw out these numbers. They don't know. They just open the floodgates. Yep. So let's, 20 million, 30 million, who knows? We know they're here. That's position number one. And position number two is if you try to deport any of them who are here in violation of U.S. immigration law, we will start a civil war with the federal government. Yep. You have to let them in, and if you try to get them out, our pledge to you is that we will start a civil war. In fact, let's go to, let's cue up cut 6, guys. This is Oregon State Senator Casey Jama. Let's hear what Senator Jama in Oregon has to say.
Let me say to these federal agencies and ICE, this is Oregon. We do not need you. You're not welcome. And you need to get the hell out of our community.
Okay, this is Oregon. We do not need you, federal government. I assume that the state senator is familiar with the fact that Oregon is a state in the union, but it appears not. Is this, Matt, the new rallying cry that Democratic activists are going to demand from their elected officials in every state in the country and every jurisdiction? Is the new litmus test for being a Democrat in good standing you demanding that the federal government not be involved in your jurisdiction?
Well, and they'll say that until there's a benefit they need from the federal government, like more Medicaid funding to feed their fraud. I saw that clip of the state senator Jama from Oregon this morning, and I thought that's very interesting to have somebody who immigrated to our country saying we don't need federal immigration enforcement. He is literally from Mogadishu. That state senator who's saying we don't need ICE enforcement here is literally from Mogadishu in Somalia. And he's saying we don't need immigration enforcement. We don't need any enforcement. But he probably will say we need federal aid to fund all of these programs that we're filtering into fraud throughout the country. And I think that's so wild to see these Democrat local officials standing shoulder to shoulder with people who are saying things like that, particularly when the need for immigration enforcement is more than ever after what we've seen the immigration population or the immigrant population in Minnesota be capable of. This is just crazy. And you look at those Democrats and you think, are they reading the room at all? There has never been a time where people are more interested in getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse like the kind that we're finding out in Minnesota. California has got 15 Minnesota-sized fraud scandals of their own. I think you go into every blue state, you're going to find some iteration of that. And so we need all of these federal forces to work together to get that out. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that Democrats would want to work against that because they need the fraud, because the fraud is what helps them build relationships with these communities of voters that they rely on.
Oh, not only do they want to work against that, they're leaning into the programs that breed the fraud. Let's hear from New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. This is Cut 5, gentlemen, about the daycares. Let's hear from Zohran.
Not only when we make pre-K truly universal, but expand this care to include all 2- and 3-year-olds across the city. As the governor said, we will deliver to care by working in partnership with child care providers, especially home-based providers. Who have been doing this work without thanks or recognition for far too.
Those are exactly the kinds of providers that are engaged in the fraud in Minnesota, are they not, Matt?
We're going to get some great quality Leering centers all over New York. And what's going to be interesting is he's been pressed. How are you going to pay for this? There's no plan to pay for it apart from raising taxes, chasing out the dwindling tax base that they're left with. But I guarantee you that none of that new funding they're going to demand for this is going to be for oversight or any kind of tracking into where that money's going. That's the pattern we're seeing in all these blue states is they want to throw the money, shovel it out the door to friends and allies without oversight in many cases, like what we've heard with Keith Ellison in Minnesota, committing to help the fraudsters we see anywhere they might be get away with this, get more money out the door. And so, New York is setting itself up to have its own multiple iterations of this Minnesota fraud scandal by things like this massive expansion of shoveling out money to home daycares that don't have any oversight, anything like that. It's just crazy to see, but Zohran is wasting no time in confirming everyone's biggest fears about him.
He's off to a wild start. Yeah, he's every day. It's another banger or 3 from Zohran. That's Matt Whitlock on the Scott Jennings Show today. More with Matt in a minute. Matt, by the way, when we come back, I'm going to ask you about Marjorie Taylor Greene and Code Pink. Before we come back, though, I want to talk to you about Relief Factor. Matt, I have no idea if you suffer from aches and pains. I do a little bit. I had a little knee pains, some. Look, I'm 48 years old. I'm starting to show a little wear and tear. But Relief Factor has made a difference for me. I've been using it since last summer. It has made a difference for my dad, and now my mom is using it. The Jennings household, the message is the Jennings household is benefiting from the use of Relief Factor. It is a daily drug-free supplement. I believe it could help you feel better and live better every single day. Here's how you get it. You try their 3-week quick start. It is only $19.95. I predict that it is highly likely that in a few weeks or even a few days, you will feel the difference that Relief Factor can make. Go to ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF and try out for 3 weeks Relief Factor. More with Matt Whitlock when we come back. It's common sense for the American people on Salem.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
Home stretch of common sense for the American people here on Friday, January 9th. Scott Jennings with you on Salem, joined by my friend Matt Whitlock, a veteran Republican communicator, host of the 10-Minute Drill at 10-Minute Drills, where you find that. It's a morning, it's like a morning roundup. You do a really good job with that. You used to work for the National Republican
I appreciate that.
Senatorial Committee, and you work for Orrin Hatch, a legend, and also Mike Lee, just a lot of experience in Matt Whitlock. I encourage you to check out the 10-Minute Drill. Matt, I want to ask you about Marjorie Taylor Greene. MTG left
This has
the
been
Congress.
crazy.
And I woke up this morning to the news in Axios that the White House believes that Marjorie Taylor Greene tipped off the radical protest group Code Pink to the whereabouts of President Trump. You remember last year, after he had deployed the National Guard, he wanted to show everybody how safe and good it was to go out in Washington, D.C. So he goes out to dinner in Washington, D.C. He was confronted there by this group of radical nuts called Code Pink. Now, it is known that Marjorie Taylor Greene is friends with the head of Code Pink. The reporting on this is that the White House believes she called Code Pink and told them where the president was going. And the further reporting is that throughout the day of that confrontation, she kept calling the White House asking, he's going to dinner, right? He's going to dinner, right? He's going to dinner, right? And demanding to know if it was actually confirmed that he was going. Matt, when you read this, did your eyes pop out of your skull? Because they did mine.
They did, mostly because it just shows how terrible this relationship has gotten. I do have questions about it. Joe's is a pretty common restaurant for anyone doing business in DC. We have, corporate dinners there quite often. They have great steak. It is just a few blocks from the White House, super convenient location, great place. People are just there a lot, but I don't think Code Pink goes there a lot. And so it is suspicious that they would have been there, set up. The restaurant claimed they had a reservation beforehand. So it wasn't just that they showed up while he was there and Secret Service missed them. I think that this is, again, Secret Service is taking heat or has taken heat in the past for them being there and not catching it beforehand, allowing this confrontation to take place. But it's super suspicious. I do think overall, watching Marjorie Taylor Greene's sort of quirky attempt at a rebrand here feels so strange. Doing The View, going to places that conservatives are sworn against and trying to sort of make a case against President Trump and Republicans feels so bizarre to me. But this felt like a stretch. It's hard for me to imagine her trying to do that, but it is really suspicious, particularly the fact about her continuing to check in throughout the day about whether he was going to go or not. And this was a bad episode. It was bad that these protesters got that close to the president, but I still have a lot of questions.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I don't know if this is true. The Axios reporting, and I'll just say it, Marjorie Taylor Greene denies it. Here, though, is something that is true. Here's something that is true. She has been upset with Donald Trump over foreign policy for a long time. She is aligned with these Code Pink people on all foreign policy matters. The reporting sounded credible to me because she is so hardcore against Trump on foreign policy that, does it sound that crazy that she would line up a bunch of radicals to confront him over it in an attempt to get him to maybe believe that the public is against him on things? It doesn't sound too crazy to me. Matt, we're about a minute to go. I'm going to institute a new segment of the Scott Jennings Show, and you're the inaugural recipient of the question. Friday Punditry, wrapping up the show. You've got 1 minute to tell me who won the week. Matt Whitlock, go.
I got to say Marco Rubio. I think the way that Marco handled all the messaging around Venezuela, you saw a viral CNN clip from earlier in the week highlighting that there's been a 25-point bump in support for the operation to arrest Nicolas Maduro and bring him to justice. I think Marco Rubio's communications and effort to sell this to the American people has a lot to do with that. I think he's done a phenomenal job in one of the 14 different hats he's wearing for this administration.
Marco Rubio, says Matt Whitlock, won the week. I'll tell you who I think lost the week. Tim Walz.
Let's hear it.
He had to drop his reelection campaign because he knows he's getting ready to get and is being overwhelmed by this fraud scandal. Then he disgraces himself on national television in the wake of this ICE shooting. Tim Walz is a buffoon, and he was already a loser. But I do believe in American politics, if Rubio is the winner, then Tim Walz is the loser. Matt Whitlock, host of the 10-Minute Drill, thanks for coming by. We'll have you back for more Friday Punditry. Thank you all for listening. We are done for the week. Enjoy the weekend. It's common sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. See you Monday.